Hey guys, tonight we step softly into Kyoto's old district of Gion, where lanterns glow like tiny moons suspended above narrow, stone-paved alleys. The air is cool, a little damp, carrying faint traces of sake and incense. Wooden facades lean close, as if they too are keeping secrets. You trail your fingers along the grain of cedar walls, feeling the smoothness polished by centuries of passing hands. Above, the paper lanterns sway gently, painting the night in washes of orange and red. You can hear distant laughter, a shamisen plucked, then silence, as if the city itself holds its breath. You probably wouldn't survive one evening here if you weren't careful. Rules and rituals could undo you before your sake even cooled. But don't worry, tonight you only wander in imagination, free of consequence. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the time where you are right now. I love seeing how many corners of the world we gather together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the lantern-lit maze, the alleys folding around you like secret corridors. A cat darts across, tail high, then vanishes into the shadows. The stone beneath your sandals is uneven, reminding you of the centuries of footsteps that carved this very path. Merchants once bustled here, samurai strode with blades at their hips, and courtesans paraded in elaborate robes. Tonight, however, it is quiet, almost dreamlike, as though the entire city has chosen to whisper. On one corner, you pause, catching the faint scent of grilled eel drifting from a hidden kitchen. The savory aroma clashes oddly with the delicate sweetness of incense trailing from an unseen room. Your senses are pulled in both directions, earthly hunger and spiritual calm, just as visitors once were. Historians still argue whether Gion was more a place of sacred artistry or of worldly distraction, but perhaps it was always both. The lanterns above flicker as a breeze curls through, and you feel the temperature shift ever so slightly. A sense of anticipation clings to the night, a promise that behind one of these sliding doors lies more than just tea or music. Somewhere, the night's secret waits. Your heartbeat slows, lulled by the rhythm of your steps and the quiet hum of the ancient city. You find yourself at the entrance of a wooden tea house, its doorway half concealed behind a Norn curtain painted with faded chrysanthemums. The paper lanterns sway above you, their crimson glow washing your face in warmth as you pause. Uncertain whether to push aside the fabric, the sound inside is muffled. Soft laughter, the clink of ceramic cups, the faint thrum of a shamisen string. It is both inviting and intimidating, as though stepping across this threshold could carry you into a different world entirely. You slide the door open with a faint creak, and the air changes instantly. The scent of tatami mats, freshly oiled wood, and the faint trace of powder and perfume envelops you. The floor seems to hush your footsteps as you cross, sandals clicking faintly before you tuck them aside. It's warmer here, more intimate, and every detail feels deliberate. Flowers arranged in a single vase, a scroll with calligraphy that you cannot read, but which feels like a message meant for you. A hostess appears, bowing deeply, her movements so practiced and fluid, they seem rehearsed yet natural at the same time. She doesn't speak much, only gestures toward the low table, waiting in the corner. You follow, and even in the way she guides you, there's a rhythm, a ritual, as if invisible strings pull her arms and steps into precise positions. You kneel by the table, the cushions soft but firm beneath your knees. The tea house hushes as you settle in, though the background murmurs continue. You notice the quiet exchange of glances among other guests, men in merchant robes, a samurai with his sword tucked aside, even a weary traveler like yourself. Everyone seems to be waiting for something, though no one dares to mention it aloud. The first bowl of tea arrives, its surface shimmering under the candlelight. You lift it carefully, steam curling upward, and the aroma is grassy, earthy, grounding. You sip, and the bitterness sharpens your senses. The warmth travels down your chest, anchoring you in this moment. You realize that what happens here is not about speed or satisfaction, but about stretching time itself, turning every motion into a gesture of meaning. A geisha may or may not arrive tonight. You're not promised anything. That is the secret tension of this place. The waiting, the wondering. Historians still argue whether the tea house was more a stage for artistry or a gateway to something else. Perhaps it depends on the guest, or the night, or the subtle mood behind a closed fan. You lean back slightly, noticing how the lanterns above flicker in tandem with your breath. You feel the tea house embracing you, drawing you further in, and with each passing moment, the outside world drifts further away. The door has closed behind you, but in truth, you have crossed into something more, a threshold not just of wood and paper, but of expectation and secret possibility. The sliding door at the far end whispers open, and the room seems to inhale. Conversation falters, cups pause midair, and every eye glances, though only for a second, before returning politely to its bowl. You, however, cannot look away. A geisha enters, her steps small and deliberate, the soft swish of her kimono filling the silence like a secret. The fabric gleams under lantern light, a cascade of silk patterned with cranes and autumn leaves, each fold alive as if painted in motion. Her face is pale, powdered into a porcelain mask that hides as much as it reveals. Lips stained crimson curve into something between a smile and a suggestion. The eyes, however, speak in a different language. Lined in black, they flash once in your direction, then slide away, leaving you unsure whether you were noticed at all. You feel warmth in your chest, the peculiar sensation of being both invisible and utterly exposed. She bows, lower than expected, but not to you, to the room, to the centuries of tradition that command her movements. Rising again, she glides toward the low platform near the shamisen, where a musician already waits. Her presence alone shifts the atmosphere. The men around you straighten unconsciously, some clearing their throats, others pretending indifference. Yet every gesture betrays anticipation, a hunger veiled under layers of etiquette. The geisha begins with a song, her voice soft, carrying notes that seem too delicate to survive the space. Yet they do, clinging to the wooden beams, trickling down like water along stones. You catch fragments of meaning, autumn winds, longing glances, a promise carried by moonlight. The shamisen joins, plucking a rhythm both sharp and haunting. It vibrates through the floor, into your knees, into your bones. And then, as the performance flows, she looks again, quick, subtle, but unmistakable. A glance that says everything and nothing, binding you for a heartbeat. You imagine, perhaps foolishly, that she has singled you out, that in this crowded tea house, the mask has cracked for a moment. Historians still argue whether geisha ever allowed themselves such personal slips, or whether even this was calculated, an artful flicker designed to snare the unwary. You cannot tell, and perhaps that is the point. The song ends. Applause is polite, restrained, yet you sense the tension in the room has thickened, as if everyone waits for what comes next. The geisha sets down her fan, her lips curling slightly upward, though not enough to be called a smile. You sip your tea again, though your throat is dry, and you know the night has only just begun. The performance fades into silence, and for a moment you expect her to vanish behind the sliding door as suddenly as she appeared. But no, the geisha glides across the tatami, her steps so precise they barely disturb the air. She approaches each guest in turn, a slow ritual of greeting, a bow here, a murmur there, every motion layered with courtesy and meaning. You realize that this is as much performance as the dance, though subtler, quieter, designed to ensnare the imagination rather than the eyes. When she reaches you, your breath falters. She lowers herself gracefully, bowing until the edges of her crimson lips nearly brush the tatami. Rising again, she lets the fan rest in her hand, closed but alive, like a secret waiting to be revealed. Her gaze lifts, only briefly, but enough for you to feel the weight of centuries pressing into a single glance. There is power here, not in the sword or the coin, but in acknowledgement. To be seen, even for a second, is to be changed. She says your name, though you never gave it. Perhaps it is a trick, or perhaps you misheard. The sound is soft, carried on the hush of lantern light. You bow in return, fumbling slightly, and hear a ripple of amusement from the other men. They, too, once stumbled here. The greeting is not just a formality. It is a test, a reminder that this world obeys rules older than memory. The hostess reappears, pouring sake into your cup. The geisha's sleeve brushes the rim as she gestures delicately toward it. You drink. The warmth blooms quickly, loosening the knots of your body, yet tightening others in your chest. She tilts her fan against her cheek, and though her lips remain motionless, you imagine she whispers something only you can hear. Historians still argue whether such gestures held true meaning, or whether the guest simply projected desires onto empty motions. The debate, perhaps, is eternal. Around you, the ritual continues. Each guest greeted, each bow measured, each glance weighed. The room becomes a web of invisible strings, and the geisha stands at its center, tugging threads with the mere flick of her wrist. You realize now that this greeting is not about formality. It is the quiet binding of promises, veiled beneath politeness, sealed with silence more than words. The fan in her hand opens suddenly, with a snap loud as thunder in the hushed room. The paper glimmers, painted with waves crashing against distant mountains. She hides half her face behind it, her eyes peeking over the edge, daring you to guess what lies beneath. And just like that, the greeting is complete. You are no longer a stranger here. You are part of the night's unfolding story. The sake flows more freely now, carried in delicate ceramic flasks that steam faintly in the candlelight. The hostess pours with both hands, sleeves tucked neatly, while the geisha hovers close, her fan tapping lightly against her palm. She does not drink herself, not yet, but she watches as you raise the cup. The warmth curls down your throat, loosening your tongue, blurring the edges of your caution. Conversation begins in fragments, whispered exchanges that barely rise above the creak of the floorboards. One guest mentions the latest rumor from Edo. Another laughs softly at a pun hidden in the name of a flower. The geisha adds her voice, low and teasing, words layered with double meanings. You are never certain whether she speaks to you, to the group, or only to herself. Every sentence seems to conceal another, like lanterns hiding shadows behind their glow. You lean closer, drawn not by the alcohol, but by the gravity of her presence. She tilts her head just slightly, allowing a strand of black hair to slip from its pin. It falls across her cheek in what might be accident, might be design. You whisper something clumsy, an observation about the tea, or perhaps the music, but she laughs, covering her mouth with the fan. The laugh is soft, but it carries weight, echoing in the ears, long after it fades. The other men watch without watching. They sip their sake, but you sense they too are caught in the spell. Each whisper meant for them as much as for you. This is the secret of the tea house. Intimacy painted across a communal canvas. Historians still argue whether these whispers ever blossomed into promises, or whether they were nothing more than a dance of suggestion. Perhaps it depends on who was listening and how much they wanted to believe. The sake cup warms in your hand as her sleeve brushes your wrist, light as silk wind. The brush may have been accidental, yet you hold your breath as though the gesture bound you to silence. She leans close enough for you to catch the faint perfume of plum blossoms, then turns away to pour for another guest. You are left with a hollow ache, like the pause between notes of a song, a silence more powerful than sound. The room hums with whispers, each voice weaving into a tapestry of secrets. The sake blurs the lines, loosening formality, but never shattering it. You sip again, and as the warmth spreads through your veins, you realize that here, in the hush of the tea house, truth is never spoken aloud. It is sipped, laughed, brushed aside with a fan, left to linger like steam above a cup. The fan rests lightly in her hand, an accessory so ordinary it should go unnoticed. Yet, in the hush of the tea house, it becomes an instrument more eloquent than speech. She flicks it open with a whispering snap, revealing painted cherry blossoms scattered across pale silk. The blossoms seem to tremble in the lantern light, though it is her wrist that moves, slow, deliberate, commanding attention without demand. She hides her lips behind the fan, eyes peering over the rim. The glance lingers, then slides away, leaving you to wonder if you were truly seen. A tilt to the left suggests amusement. A tap against her cheek signals mild disapproval. The sudden closing of the fan a quiet end to a thought no one else will ever hear. You begin to notice the rhythm, the coded gestures flowing like a second conversation, layered atop the first. Across the room, another geisha answers in kind. Her fan flutters twice, opens halfway, then snaps shut. To untrained eyes, it is nothing. To those attuned, it is poetry, a hidden dialogue conducted in silence. You sip your sake and feel as though you've stumbled into a secret language, one older than any written script. Historians still argue whether this language of the fan was ever truly codified, or whether each house invented its own dialect. Perhaps the ambiguity was the point. Mystery, not clarity, was the true currency here. The geisha before you lets her fan drift lazily through the air, tracing an invisible circle. The motion seems careless, but you sense precision beneath the languor. It feels like an invitation, though to what you cannot say. You find your own hand mimicking the curve, fingers unconsciously sketching the same pattern against the table. She notices, her eyes narrowing just slightly, the hint of a smile tugging at painted lips. The room vibrates with unspoken words. Merchants laugh too loudly. A samurai clears his throat. Yet the fans continue their silent discourse, shaping meanings lost on most. You realize that in this place, truth is not delivered openly. It arrives folded into gestures, tucked between movements, concealed beneath layers of etiquette. Her fan snaps shut again, the sound sharp as a blade cutting through conversation. All eyes flick toward her, then away, embarrassed to have noticed. She lowers the fan slowly, resting it against her lap. For a moment, the performance halts, and the room holds still, waiting for the next cue. You feel your pulse match the rhythm of her hand, as if your heart itself were tied to the hidden script she writes in the air. The lanterns overhead sway gently, as if summoned by the faint pluck of the shamisen. The geisha rises, her kimono unfolding like a silken wave around her ankles. With her fan still in hand, she moves to the open floor space cleared for performance. The light settles on her like a second robe, painting her outline in warm hues, while shadows ripple across the tatami in delicate patterns. The dance begins slowly, every motion deliberate, each turn of her wrist weighted with meaning. She steps with such precision that it feels less like movement and more like gliding, her feet never rushing, her arms curving like brush strokes across parchment. The paper lanterns above flicker, their glow mirrored in the sheen of her silk sleeves. You feel as if you are watching time itself breathe, stretched thin between gestures. At first, the movements appear simple, almost boring to an untrained eye. But the longer you watch, the more detail you notice. The subtle arch of her back as she bends, the hesitation before each turn, the pause that lets your imagination fill in what is left unsaid. Her fan opens and closes in rhythm, punctuating her steps like a whispered exclamation. The music grows richer, strings trembling faster beneath the musician's fingers. She matches the tempo with a sudden flourish, her kimono swirling as she pivots. A painted crane across the fabric seems to leap into flight, wings spread in the candlelight. You catch your breath, unsure if it was silk or spirit that just moved. Historians still argue whether these dances carried coded stories of love and desire, or whether they were purely abstract art. Yet watching now, you cannot deny the suggestion. The dance is as much invitation as expression. The men around you lean forward unconsciously, their faces caught in the glow. Some smile faintly, others attempt to mask their interest, but none look away. The geisha commands the room without a word, her body shaping the silence into something tangible. Even the shamisen quiets for a moment, letting the shuffle of her feet and the swish of fabric set the rhythm. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the dance slows again. She holds still, fan half open, gaze lowered, as though waiting for someone, perhaps you, to breathe. The pause stretches, fragile and endless. You feel yourself suspended in that moment, weightless beneath the lantern light, as though the world itself has been folded into her hands. The shamisen strings quiver, breaking the stillness left in the wake of her dance. The musician plucks carefully, coaxing out notes that sound almost human. Half sigh, half lament, the sound fills the tea house weaving into the wooden beams, sliding beneath the paper walls, curling like incense smoke around your ears. Each vibration seems to touch a hidden nerve, awakening something ancient inside you. The geisha lowers herself gracefully to the tatami, fan closed now, resting across her lap. Her presence remains the room's quiet center, but she lets the music take precedence. The shamisen is not merely accompaniment, it is another voice in the dialogue, one that speaks in tones too fragile for words. You watch the musician's fingers, how they strike and release with precision, pulling sorrow and joy from three simple strings. The guests murmur appreciation. One man closes his eyes, swaying slightly. Another hums along, out of tune, but with feeling. You sip your sake again, and for the first time, you notice how the drink and the music blend. The warmth in your chest matching the tremor in the strings. The geisha glances toward the musician, a nod so faint it could have been imagined. The partnership between them is unspoken, a duet of silence and sound. The melody shifts suddenly, quickening into something playful, even mischievous. She raises her fan again, tapping it lightly against her palm in rhythm. The tempo encourages laughter, heads bobbing, hands drumming softly against thighs. You realize the shamisen is as versatile as any human voice. It can weep, tease, cajole, seduce. Historians still argue whether the songs performed in these houses carried hidden meanings, political commentary cloaked in metaphor, or whether they were simply meant to entertain. Perhaps both could be true. Your gaze drifts back to her face, painted white, lips crimson, eyes sharp as a blade, hidden behind silk. She does not smile, not fully, but her expression reflects the music's playful rise. It feels as though she, too, is testing you. Will you follow her through this change in rhythm? Or will you stumble? The shamisen laughs through its notes, daring you to keep up. The song peaks, then softens again, a tide receding into still waters. The last note lingers impossibly long, a ghost hanging in the air. When silence finally claims it, the room feels different, emptier, quieter, as though something vital has been taken with that final vibration. You breathe deeply, realizing your heartbeat had been matching the tempo without your permission. Now it slows, heavy, as the night deepens around you. Her face catches the lantern light, a pale canvas carefully crafted into perfection. The powder smooths away pores, age, blemishes, everything human. Her lips, drawn smaller than their true shape, glow red like a painted gate against snow. You realize you're not looking at her face at all, but at a mask, a performance written in pigments and brushes, and yet the mask itself seems alive, as if daring you to guess what it conceals. She tilts her head slightly, and the shadows shift across her cheeks. The movement is subtle, but you sense layers beneath. Amusement, fatigue, perhaps even defiance. You wonder whether her true face, beneath the powder and paint, wears the same expression. Historians still argue whether this makeup was meant to dehumanize or to empower, whether it stripped women of individuality or gave them armor to perform roles otherwise denied. Watching her now, you can believe both arguments at once. The fan returns to her lips, hiding half her mask while her eyes do the rest. They dart, linger, and withdraw in a rhythm impossible to follow. You realize that the mask does not conceal identity so much as it multiplies it. She is geisha, woman, artist, mystery, all layered so tightly that no gesture can reveal which is the truth. A merchant across the room leans forward, emboldened by drink, attempting a compliment. She answers with a nod, gracious but impenetrable, the mask offering politeness without promise. He chuckles nervously, retreating into his cup. The mask holds power because it denies clarity. You sip your own sake and feel the strangeness of desiring what you cannot see. For a fleeting second, you imagine the mask melting, the paint washing away, the red lips smudged, the white surface cracking. Would she still hold the same command without it? Would the mystery endure? She glances your way, and the thought dissolves. The mask is her reality, and yours. You realize now that it does not hide her. It defines the very stage on which this night unfolds. The lanterns flicker, shadows stretch, and her face remains unchanged. A calm moon amidst shifting clouds. You cannot know what lies beneath, and perhaps you are not meant to. The mask itself is the secret, and it will not be removed tonight. The sake cups are never empty, yet the true exchange here has little to do with alcohol. You begin to notice the way glances drift, linger, then retreat. A fan snaps shut at the exact moment a cup is set down. A sleeve brushes against a wrist just as the lantern flickers. None of it seems accidental. Though no one speaks directly, the negotiations of the tea house are woven not in contracts or coins, but in silences and suggestion. The merchant to your left clears his throat, leaning slightly forward. The geisha turns her head just enough to acknowledge him, her smile polite, eyes unreadable. He chuckles softly, as if rewarded. Though nothing has truly passed between them, another man adjusts his posture, showing the edge of his purse beneath his robe. The gesture is noted, but not addressed. You realize the night is a game of offers without words, of promises suspended in air, never binding, yet never free of consequence. She turns toward you briefly, and in that moment you understand the tension. The negotiation is not about what will happen, but what might. Every sip, every nod, every pause suggests possibilities left deliberately unclear. The room hums with expectation, and though no bargain is struck, everyone acts as though one might be at any second. Historians still argue whether such encounters were purely symbolic, a dance of art and etiquette, or whether they veiled genuine arrangements behind their rituals. The truth, perhaps, lies in the ambiguity, the way possibility itself holds more power than certainty. Your cup is refilled once more, and as her sleeve brushes past, you feel the unspoken weight of the moment. Nothing has been promised, yet everything feels negotiated. The silence thickens, charged with meanings too fragile to name. You realize that in this house, words are unnecessary. The language of eyes, fans, and gestures has already written the contract of the night. The hour grows late, yet the night feels suspended, as though time itself has chosen to linger here. Lanterns burn lower, their light softer now, halos of gold swimming in the drifting smoke of extinguished candles. You sip again, but the sake no longer tastes sharp. It has mellowed into something round and comforting, a liquid haze binding the room together. The geisha leans closer to a guest across the table, her voice so quiet it barely stirs the air. He nods, smiling faintly, though you cannot hear what she has said. The moment feels private, yet it is performed in plain sight. Promise whispered, but never explained. You begin to see that the real currency here is not money or even pleasure. It is possibility, the allure of what might happen behind the veil of silence. She turns toward you once more, her eyes catching yours, and though no words pass, you feel the brush of meaning. Perhaps it is an invitation, or perhaps only a reflection of your own hope. That is the genius of the ritual. The guest fills in the gaps, weaving their own story into the threads she leaves dangling. Her fan opens halfway, then lingers, trembling as though caught between choices. You imagine it saying yes or no, or perhaps both at once. She lets it close slowly, deliberately, then lowers her gaze. The promise remains veiled, never confirmed, never denied. Historians still argue whether these interactions ever led to intimacy beyond the tea house walls, or whether the veil was the entire point, an endless play of suggestion that never crossed into reality. To watch her now, you believe both could be true. The veil is both barrier and bridge, concealing even as it entices. Around you, the guests grow quieter, their movements heavier, their breaths slower. The night presses on, but every glance, every gesture feels heightened, charged with unspoken promises. You realize that you're no longer waiting for clarity. The uncertainty itself has become the story. And so, the night continues, veiled in secrecy, heavy with possibilities that will never be named aloud. Just as you begin to settle into the rhythm of the night, the sliding door stirs again. This time, it is not a geisha who enters, but a courtesan from beyond these walls, her presence like a draft of cold air slipping into the tea house. She is adorned more boldly, her kimono patterned with vivid colors and trailing longer than tradition dictates. Her hair rises high, studded with ornaments that gleam in the lantern light. She does not glide, she strides, and the room shifts to accommodate her. The geisha remains seated, poised and unbothered, though the slightest twitch of her fan betrays awareness. The courtesan bows perfunctorily, but it is shallow, more gesture than respect. She does not need to charm through subtlety. Her art lies in extravagance. You notice the men around you straighten, some eyes widening, others darting quickly back toward their cups. The courtesan's shadow stretches across the tatami, falling directly over the geisha, a silent challenge cast in silk and hairpins. The contrast is undeniable. The geisha, quiet and enigmatic, weaves promises that may never be fulfilled. The courtesan offers immediacy, luxury, the blunt allure of the body. Historians still argue whether the presence of courtesans undermined the mystique of geisha, or whether the rivalry sharpened both arts into something more distinct. Tonight, watching the two women share a room, you sense that the tension itself is part of the performance. The courtesan laughs, louder than the music, her voice dripping confidence. She pours her own sake, raising the cup high before drinking, a gesture of independence. The geisha lowers her eyes, serene, her silence louder than any boast. The men glance between them, caught in a tug of war where neither woman truly seeks victory. Both thrive in the contrast. You feel the air grow dense, charged with rival energies. One woman cloaked in suggestion, the other in certainty. One conceals, the other reveals. The room is richer for their difference, though no one dares to comment aloud. You sip your drink and wonder whether you are witnessing competition, collaboration, or a delicate dance where both roles are necessary. The courtesan's shadow finally retreats as she steps aside, but it lingers in your mind. The geisha remains composed, her mask unbroken, her fan steady in her hand. Yet you know she too has felt the weight of that shadow, and so have you. The room exhales as the courtesan drifts back into the periphery, but the atmosphere has shifted. You sense it in the silence that follows, in the way the guests glance nervously at their cups, as though unsure which path they now prefer. The geisha remains seated, posture perfect, her fan resting lightly against her lap. The mask of serenity never falters, but you can almost hear the unspoken question, will the guests choose art or intimacy? She raises her shamisen, the lacquered wood glinting beneath the lantern light, and begins to play herself. The notes are sharper, more deliberate, each pluck landing like a question mark. Her gaze drifts briefly across the room, daring you to interpret the sound. Is it merely music, or something more? You realize she is weaving her response, not in words or rivalry, but in artistry. The melody softens, shifting into something more vulnerable, almost tender. Her lips part slightly, and a song emerges, a story of longing carried across autumn fields, of lovers who wait and never meet. The room falls utterly silent, all tension absorbed by the haunting sound. The courtesan, too, listens, her bright colors suddenly muted in the shadow of the song. You realize that the contest was never truly between them. It is between art and the body, between suggestion and certainty. Historians still argue whether geisha blurred that line, whether their art was simply a refined veil for intimacy, or whether the intimacy was entirely imagined by the guests. To watch her now, you understand the paradox. The art is the intimacy. Each gesture, each note, is more personal than any physical act, and yet the ambiguity lingers. Was there more behind the curtain, or was the curtain itself the entirety of the allure? Your chest feels tight, as if the song has wound itself around your ribs. You sip your sake, but the warmth cannot chase away the ache. She finishes with a long, trembling note, letting it fade into silence. The lanterns sway as if in applause, though no one dares to break the quiet. She lowers her shamisen slowly, eyes lowered, and in that moment you realize that you are caught in the balance between art and intimacy, between what is shown and what is forever withheld. The first hint of dawn presses faintly against the paper walls, a pale gray that softens the glow of the lanterns. The tea house, once vibrant with murmurs and music, now settles into a hush. Guests lean back, their cups half full, their movements slower, as though the weight of the night has folded them into stillness. You feel it too, that quiet moment when revelry begins to dissolve, leaving only echoes behind. The geisha rises once more, her movements steady, though slower now, as if matching the rhythm of the waning night. She bows deeply to the room, a gesture of closure. The courtesan has already vanished, leaving only the faint trace of her perfume, sharp and lingering in the air. The geisha's bow feels final, a line drawn between dream and waking. You gather your sandals, tucking them neatly beneath your feet. As you stand, the tatami sighs beneath your weight, a sound that reminds you how temporary your place here has been. Around you, other men shuffle quietly, eyes cast down, each one retreating into his own thoughts. No contracts signed, no promises sealed, yet everyone leaves, carrying something intangible, as though a shadow has been pressed into their memory. She meets your gaze once more, only briefly, as you turn toward the door. The mask is intact, the fan folded neatly, the mystery unbroken. And yet, in that final look, you sense something you cannot name. Perhaps a farewell, perhaps nothing at all. The ambiguity lingers, more powerful than any clarity could be. Historians still argue whether these moments at dawn were simply the end of a performance or whether they held some deeper significance. Was the retreat an erasure, a return to anonymity, or was it the quiet affirmation that the night had mattered, even if it could never be spoken? The answer is lost to history, but the question remains. You slide the door open, and the cool morning air rushes in. The lanterns outside are extinguished, their paper skins pale in the new light. The alleys that once shimmered with secrets now look ordinary, their stones damp with dew. The city stirs awake, unaware of the veiled world hidden just beyond its walls. You step into the gray dawn, carrying whispers that no one else will hear. And now, as dawn washes the narrow alleys of Kyoto, let your mind soften with the fading of the night. The footsteps of merchants fade into the distance. The laughter of guests lingers only as a memory, and the paper lanterns hang quiet, their glow extinguished until another evening. You can almost hear the shamisen's final trembling string, echoing faintly as though carried by the morning breeze. Breathe slowly, letting the rhythm of those ancient streets ease your body. Imagine the silk of a kimono brushing past, the faint scent of incense drifting lazily through the air, the quiet bow of a geisha fading into shadow. These are no longer stories to hold tightly, but whispers to let slip gently from your hands. Like smoke rising, they dissolve into the cool dawn. The weight of questions, what was real, what was only suggestion, doesn't matter anymore. What remains is the calm, the softness of ritual, the peace found in ambiguity. Each breath you take can be another lantern dimming, another shadow receding, another step into rest. Let your eyes grow heavy, your thoughts quiet. The secrets of Kyoto's nights are safe now, carried off into history and into your dreams. There is nothing left to chase, nothing to hold, only the calm embrace of sleep, wrapping around you as silk might fold softly over the body. Rest now, knowing the night story is complete. The lanterns will wait, the city will dream, and you too can surrender to the hush. Sweet dreams.